pharmacy when I first started. So I've kind of adopted that model from day one, and it's kind of grown. And I've just really learned that, the golden goose days of filling prescriptions and making money are kind of gone. I hate to say that. When I opened my door, my thoughts were, hey, if I take care of patients as a side effect, I'm going to make a living. Well, those days have kind of passed and it's changed, but that's
Welcome to the Money Medicine Podcast, where we discuss strategies to grow your healthcare business, tools to accelerate that growth, and how top practices and pharmacies are executing and winning. All right, today we are back with podcast number 26. As always, I have Logan Morse with me on the pod, and today we have a special guest. We talk about guests all the time. I know there's been a little bit of a holdout recently, but today we came back with a great guest. I think you guys are going to learn a lot from him, Mr. Steve Hoffert from Magnolia, Texas, the president of Magnolia Pharmacy. Thanks for hopping on, Steve.
awesome. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, glad to have you. So, just briefly, I'm sure anyone that's been in the pharmacy space for quite some time probably has an idea, have heard of you, seen you on stage winning some sort of award. But could you give a little insight or background on Magnolia Pharmacy, who you are, and how we got to today?
Gotcha. Yeah. Magnolia Pharmacy started in 2002 as just a traditional retail pharmacy. And as all pharmacists know nowadays, practices change. We're a hybrid. We do traditional pharmacy services. In addition, though, we do a tremendous amount of compounding. But throughout the journey, we've always kind of focused on wellness and health. Back many, many moons ago, my mentor basically was doing consults and working with patients in a wellness space outside of pharmacy when I first started. So I've kind of adopted that model from day one, and it's kind of grown. And I've just really learned that, the golden goose days of filling prescriptions and making money are kind of gone. I hate to say that. When I opened my door, my thoughts were, hey, if I take care of patients as a side effect, I'm going to make a living. Well, those days have kind of passed and it's changed, but that's the neat thing about being a local independent pharmacy and the ability to pivot and provide for the community. And what it's allowed for us is to basically practice at a level where we do things different. We create a pharmacy experience that isn't just putting pills in a bottle. Yeah, we still do that. And to be honest, that's how we get patients in the store. But the way I see it, that's not where we're going to make money, and that's not how we're going to impact patients. That's just to get them in the door. And from there, it's opening up that ability to touch that patient in a way that no other healthcare practitioner can, because the number of touches that we get in a local community pharmacy is so spectacular. The accessibility is so unique. And I think that's what makes Magnolia Pharmacy in particular, but independent pharmacy special, and just trying to find the unique ways to improve the health and wellness of that patient other than just filling prescriptions.
Yeah, that's a great overview. And I think a lot of people listening, and I know, Logan, you share that view as well. So to go back in time a little bit to 2002, how did Magnolia Pharmacy come about? Did you start at the pharmacy? Did you buy the pharmacy? Did you start the pharmacy? Like, how did Magnolia Pharmacy start with, I guess, your role specifically?
Yeah, so when I got out of pharmacy school, I went directly to work for a local independent pharmacy, and fortunately or unfortunately, he couldn't afford me full time, so I split time between two independents. He saw the PBM market coming basically in the late 90s and saw what was happening, and he even told me, it's kind of funny, I look back and he's like, this PBM thing, I don't think this is going to be good for pharmacy, because I remember him billing paper claims. And he's like, I'm not getting reimbursed. And at one point he said, you know what, I hate to do this, but I'm going to sell. So he sold out to a local grocery store chain, and I went to work for them, and I was there for 2 or 3 years. And I said, this just doesn't do it for me. He went off and created a consultative practice, so actually where he worked with ladies with infertility, PCOS, and actually got paid for his time to help improve infertility issues. He was doing gluten-free diets and wellness and supplements back when, I don't think anybody even knew what that was. So I opened up the traditional pharmacy at that point and jumped right in and just filled prescriptions. I mean, that's all I knew what to do. But then as I got down that road and I realized through his kind of mentorship, realizing that, there's more to this than filling traditional prescriptions. This healthcare model is really a sick care model. And I enjoy, taking care of patients in need, but what else can we do? And he's the one that put me on to compounding, and we joined PCCA out of Houston. And then I started going to education events and kind of got into a little bit of BHRT. And then you realize that there's another whole world of pharmacy and taking care of patients on a personalized medicine front that we just didn't get in pharmacy school. And then that just kind of blossomed to where I'm not going to say I don't spend time on my traditional pharmacy world, but the wellness space just really captivated me about creating wellness, not only in my own health, but then spreading that to patients. And it seems like from there, over the years, we've just attracted those patients that have, gone to 3, 4, 5, 6 different practitioners and can't get well. The traditional retail pharmacy on the corner, big box store isn't going to take care of them. And that's the part we filled that niche to try to create a space that you can come and get something at our pharmacy that you just can't get anywhere. We got into, saliva testing for hormones. We got into blood work testing for micronutrient testing for vitamins. And then it just kind of all going from there. And you realize when you start kind of helping in one thing, it leads to something else. And next thing you know, you kind of become a one-stop shop for patients.
Yeah.
It's well said.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you the number of patients who come in, and you said it so well, is independent pharmacies can spend so much more time with you than any of your providers. And it's not their fault, because that's the way that the system is, right? You get 15, 20 minutes with your provider, whereas independent pharmacies, we can spend 30, 40, 50, hours with you to try to get you on that wellness. So I think that's wonderful that you guys kind of adopted it so early, when probably many pharmacies, it was not on their radar.
100%. Yeah. And that's, I mean, honestly, and that's what I think attracts, not only attracted me to it, but then the staff that I have. I mean, it's really not hard to go out and recruit awesome pharmacists and awesome technicians that just don't want to come fill prescriptions. I mean, they want to touch patients' lives and make an impact and a difference. And that's, to me, creating that environment, that atmosphere where your staff wants to do that, and they become extension of what your mantra and your culture and your thoughts are. That's really what makes the business drive. And that's the cool part, because there's only one of me. I only can generate so much business by myself. But when you create a culture where your whole staff wants to do that, that's when the fun starts to happen, and you create and do things that you just couldn't do by yourself.
Yeah, I think we'll get into it, but you definitely lead from the front. But we'll talk about that in a second. So again, kind of going back to the starting the pharmacy from scratch. One thing that I love about you, and obviously don't know you all that well. We've had a shorter relationship, I guess, or haven't known each other all that long. But in what I've observed is you jump right in. So take me back to mindset, kind of, the emotions of Steve starting the pharmacy in 2002. Like, were you gung ho? No way, this isn't successful. Like, were you nervous with maybe the investment of getting started? Were the first couple months rocky? Like, what did it look like in the early days when you started Magnolia Pharmacy? And like, what was your?
To be honest with you, I had
I
no
guess
earthly
mental
clue what I
space
was
going
doing.
into
I didn't
to
come
starting
from
the
a family of
pharmacy?
entrepreneurs. I come from a family of worker bees. Like, we don't do stuff like that. And so I'm not going to lie. I come from a family of not much. I home equity my home just to get the money to put down for an SBA loan. I walked in the door day one with like $35,000 worth of inventory. And day one, because I came back to the community I went to school in, day one, I opened up and filled 100 prescriptions. And I'm like, whoa, what are we doing here? This isn't the way it's supposed to be.
Wow.
And it was awesome, because what happened is word got out that word got out to my employer that I was leaving and opening up my own store. So we had started kind of the word getting out. And so come day one, people were holding, filling their prescriptions and came to me day one, and it just took off. And I'll be honest with you, I'm grateful that we were not in the world of Med D at that point, because at least all the seniors was just cash prescriptions. We got the money right off the bat. We didn't have to wait for reimbursement. But what happened is at this point, I'm not going to lie, my business inclination and what to do, I had no clue. I did not realize you could grow yourself out of business, because like I said, I had a minimal amount of inventory. I think I had about $35,000 sitting on the shelf, and you're filling 100 scripts a day. Well, I'd say almost every other prescription you're filling, you don't have that drug on the shelf. So you would order a $400 bottle of pills. It would come in. You would use 30 pills out of it. You would dispense it. You'd get paid, $100. Let's just pick as an example. But then you got to pay for the rest of that bottle of pills in a couple weeks. Well, that wouldn't happen once a day. That would happen 10 times a day and 50 times a month. And next thing you know, my inventory is growing. I didn't have the cash flow. And I was like, how is this? I'm filling all these prescriptions and I have no money in the bank. And that was back when kind of pharmacy was good still then, back in 2002. And you can make a little money even on the PBM side. And so it's one of those type things where my business acuity had to get really smart in a hurry. I got really fortunate. I went from, like you said, I had myself, I had one technician and one customer service person. It ended up kind of just taking off. And next thing you know, it was like, okay, here we go. But it was definitely a learning experience. I had no clue how to run a business. So it was kind of trial by fire. But it was good. The community supported me. And that's the thing I've learned from day one is if you take care of your community and fill that niche of what they need, they're always going to support you. And I think that's what makes an independent so cool is the community support you get through the tough times to the good times. They're always there to support you. And they knew I started on my own. I was kind of a local boy and they came back and supported me. And from there, life's just kind of exploded. And, today I've got 36 employees and life's good. I can't complain. It's a struggle. It's got its challenges at times. Sometimes I think, God, I kind of wish I just had 5 employees again. But, like I said, when you have a big staff, you get to touch people and do things you couldn't do otherwise. And sometimes I look and think like, how did I get things done when it was just me by myself as the only pharmacist? So.
Yeah. And to maybe double click on that a little bit, because I think maybe I should have asked this at the beginning, but roughly speaking, be as specific or unspecific as you want, but like, what does the pharmacy look like from a, number of team, like maybe volume perspective, square, like, and the reason I ask is because if people don't know you and take this compliment or don't, but I think sometimes it's the message and sometimes it's the messenger. I want people to understand kind of like the success you've been able to have. So maybe they're
yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, because I started out in a little
strip
strip center with about 1,500 square foot. My compound lab might have been 75 square foot. It was such a joke. I mean, I kind of think about like where we started. It was very, very small. Like I said, I had a couple employees. I was really fortunate within like about the first 8 months, I was able to hire a pharmacist because I just couldn't do it all myself. And in that regard, unlike a lot of other smaller independent pharmacies, I had a staff that gave me freedom then to kind of like grow. And because I think that's what happens. So many pharmacists get caught in the trap of opening up a store, taking over a store and feeling like they have to do it all. Well, I felt pretty good because it gave me the freedom to kind of get out and get and cross pollinate with industry leaders and organizations and grow. And then from there in 2008, we moved to a bigger space. We've got about 5,100 square foot. At this point, I would say probably 2,000 square foot of it now is kind of front end. I would say probably 1,500 square foot is the lab and another like 1,500 square foot approximately is our compound lab. I mean, our compound lab, we remodeled recently to get ready for the new USP 800, 795 and 797. We do hazard and non-hazardous. We do sterile and non-sterile. And I mean, it's a crazy operation. I run a pharmacy residency program, which to me is one of the kind of the something like I always wanted to do. And like, that's a real leap of faith because it's two parts about that. One, you're going to take a young pharmacist and throw them in an environment that's fresh out of school. And like, we don't have a normal pharmacy. I tell everybody that comes to work for me, this is an awesome place to work. But I'm also going to tell you, this is the hardest place you'll ever work because I'm telling you, there's so many things going on. It's like, I look at like the NCPA digest and like, sometimes I think, oh my God, the average pharmacist owner owns like 2 point something pharmacies or something like that, or 1 point something pharmacies. I only have one, but I can tell you my one compared to NCPA digest is like 3. So it's like, it's one pharmacy, but it's like almost like 2 pharmacies and one with the compounding and non-compounding. But the way that it's grown and what's happened is that and this is something I've had to learn, and that's delegating and handing things off. I'm really big on starting new projects and ideas and doing something different. I like to do it first myself, but then I'm going to hand it off and give it to somebody else and let them grow and take that in their leadership and let them grow with that and let them develop it and let them put their hands in it. I'm there to guide and I'm there to support, but that's just kind of how our compounding's grown and taken off. And that's kind of the neat thing is just to see other people lead and you can kind of, give them the push, but then grow. And I would say the other thing that I think's made our pharmacy dynamic is my ability and our staff's ability just to get outside the 4 walls. I feel like so many pharmacy owners and pharmacies just get stuck in their own bubble. And if you don't get out and see what others are doing, not so much. I mean, I have to admit it. Do I copy people? Heck yeah, I copy them all the time. but I want to give my own spin on it and make it good. But that's what's made us grow and bring new ideas and not just be stagnant. Because no offense, if you're just filling prescriptions nowadays, you're not going to be here 5 years from now. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great point. And I kind of want to highlight that. What do you think, the next 5, 10 years is going to look like for pharmacies? And that kind of includes both kind of the hybrid models. Where do you think those
So it's
individuals who
really
are
cool you
hybrid,
say that. I've spent a lot of time the last
where
two
do you think
weeks.
they're going to
I'm
lean
not
towards?
only I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm on a lot of boards and different things. To me, one of the most exciting things that's happened like in the last 5 years is something called CPESN. It's a CIN, it's a clinically integrated network of pharmacies that go to payers to get reimbursed
Mhm.
for the things that we've been pushing since in pharmacy school. It's the time that we spend with patients to basically, I mean, up to now, we've been looked at as a retail business and a product. And no offense, like I'll take offense. I'm not a product. I'm a service. I provide an experience. I provide wellness. I provide an opportunity for patients to get their health back and basically save healthcare dollars. Well, through CPESN, we have the ability now with payers, and we're starting to show our worth to basically bill for that time and produce outcomes. And I think the thing, I'm going to be honest with you, the other thing that's happened here in Texas, really fortunate with our laws, is the medical billing space. Because I'll use COVID as an example. So, during COVID, we all gave COVID vaccines, and whether you're for them or against them now, that's one thing. But I'm going to go back and say it was a real thing because we pushed as pharmacy to get paid $40 to give a COVID vaccine. And we gave thousands of them. But the thing is, that's one thing, but that's still a product. When you went to a doctor and got a COVID vaccine, not only did you get the $40 for the COVID vaccine, but they billed for an office visit because at the same time, they talked about what the vaccine was for, how it worked, how it was provided, what to watch for, take Tylenol if you have fever, blah, 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 blah. But the thing with that is for every one we made 40, they made 110. Well, that's the big thing right now, especially here in Texas. We have the ability to bill for like a vaccine consult for every vaccine that we give. So the same type thing is happening where you have that's the thing is moving forward, pharmacy's going to start getting billed for basically their time and their consult and what their efforts are. And really, to me, that's the exciting part because I think it's going to be a balance of getting reimbursed for the script, but then also reimbursed for our time. I'm super excited about the idea of being reimbursed for time in the sense of compounding and our consults. Every new patient that comes to us for compounds, I mean, we're spending 10, 15, 20 minutes going over how hormones work, what to watch for. Well, how cool is it that we can possibly bill for that time? Will we get reimbursed? Sometimes we do, sometimes we won't. But I think what it does is it creates the perception that, hey, when I ask for your medical card, because by the way, we're going to bill for an office visit for this. And part of it's education because, all of a sudden, if a patient gets a bill that, hey, you went to the pharmacy and they haven't met their deductible and they get a bill that says, hey, you owe the pharmacy $50. The cool thing about that is even though we don't collect that $50 from the patient, it lets the patient know that my time is valuable and that I have something to offer. And I'm telling you, in the next 5 to 10 years, that's going to be a major revenue stream for pharmacies. Now, the problem is most pharmacies don't realize that you've got to change workflow. It's kind of like MedSync back in the day. Nobody wanted to do MedSync, but once people realize that it changes the world you live in by controlling how those patients come to your pharmacy, how they interact, you set the workflow. You don't have to live by the retail craziness. You control the workflow. You control your inventory. It's the same thing with medical billing. We've got to work this into our workflows and because basically we've got to do medical billing and it's part of the coding and sending all that in. But I think that's where the future of pharmacy is. And the combination of doing that, some people are lucky. They're in practice settings so they can charge cash and we're pretty lucky. We do cash consults and we get paid for those. But I think that's the part of being actually to build a healthcare plan for your time and get reimbursed is going to be a true game changer in pharmacy. I never really thought I'd see it, but I think the market has dictated that that's where pharmacy's going.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So, as you kind of take a look at pharmacy as a whole, I think it's without question there's a lot of maybe doom and gloom kind of like outlook on it. And I think what I appreciate about kind of just the way that you explain that is, I mean, and just this podcast as a whole is you kind of have a pep in your step, and that there's some bad, there's some things that you wish were different, but you just keep kind of marching along and you keep innovating, you keep looking at other opportunities, to continue to grow Magnolia Pharmacy and evolve over time. I know you're all over the place with events, you're on boards, etc. How important do you think it is as the pharmacy owner to be out and about attending these events and networking and seeing what other pharmacies are doing. And what does that maybe look like over the years for you, from maybe when you first got started to more recently? What events have you found to be the most valuable if someone's been maybe inside their four walls for quite some time and is looking to get out and
Yeah, you
try to
bring up
get
a
some of
great
the
point, and
best
that's
information from
a
some of the best
pharmacy,
leaders in
especially the
pharmacy.
owner. One has to have an open mind. I mean, I mean, and I think that I'm starting to see pharmacy. And maybe I'm just getting old, but as I started to see pharmacy get a little older, when I go to things, I see younger and younger owners, which makes me excited because that generation knows that, look, we've got to do something different. So the two aspects of is one, how do you clinically change your practice to make it profitable? And I think that's a must. And the only way to do that is to cross pollinate ideas with other practitioners. Me personally, I do enjoy going to NCPA. It's a lot of like-minded practitioners. It's a lot of people that, you can hang out with and get some really good ideas. I think NCPA really pushes that. The other aspect too, I'm not going to lie, I'm a big PCCA guy. Their education and their idea about teaching health and wellness and the programming and the education they bring to bring you confident in your compounding skills, I think is really, really big. The other thing is too, I'm a big wellness guy. So to me, I have to stay up to date on the latest and what's happening. And the way I see it is this, the space that a pharmacist is in, filling, like we mentioned earlier, filling the prescription is getting the patient in the door. But at that point, it's all the little things you can do. You're going to have to know a little about nutrition and eating because that's kind of where it all starts. No offense. I mean, it all starts with what you put in your mouth. But then again, too, you have to understand hormones and what it means to have stress so you can take care of patients there. And the next aspect is the supplement side. I mean, it's you've got to know the supplements, what's best, what can do. And then if prescription drugs come in, that's great. It's lifestyle. It's all of those things. It's all the little pieces to me that add up, that promote wellness. And so there's a lot of wellness events, a lot of like the other thing I think is really beneficial is going to some of the supplement vendors. They have really awesome conferences where they bring in top-notch speakers to talk about how supplements and how wellness can interact. And I mean, I'm a little slanted because I'm more of a wellness guy. But a more traditional practice is going to be, there's other things you can do. I mean, like MedSync is one of the things. Like, I mean, no offense, if you don't have 50 to 60% of your maintenance patients MedSync, you're missing the boat because every month you have to reach out to those patients through those fills, but every one of those is a patient contact for you to check. Are they up to date on immunizations? Are they missing their drugs? Do they have social determinants of health that make it where maybe you don't even, I mean, I know you're there to fill their prescriptions, but maybe they can't even put food in their table, or they can't afford their bills till they keep their electricity on. And we have a lot of resources that we can provide, and getting your technicians involved in terms of like many places now are becoming and making them like caseworkers so that they can provide some of these outside resources, because no offense, sometimes the pharmacy is really the only outlet these patients have. But I think I probably say yes more than I should, but I can go back and say a lot of the things I do, I get as much as I give. And the thing is, you've got to take and get outside your bubble and put yourself around like-minded practitioners that just, because you're right, I could sit and be all sad all day long and think, oh man, this pharmacy industry stinks and we're just never going to make it. But to me, that's what I love about being an entrepreneur and the ability to see what my community needs, see where I can push the envelope, maximize and push my license to the extreme. And let's see, I hate to say, I'm not going to say, see what I can get away with, but let me see what I can push it to and see what I can do to make a difference, but also make a living. I mean, I think that's probably my hardest thing is it's like, oh, I'm just going to take care of patients and if I pay the bills, that's great. But no offense. I mean, there's a lot of risks that you take running a business, especially a pharmacy. I mean, you could screw things up bad and get in trouble. So you've got to reward that risk with profit and be able to make a good living, not only, like you said, for yourself, but for your staff. I mean, that's the one thing sometimes I kind of forget is I've got 30 something employees that depend on me for a living. That's feeding their kids and putting a roof over their head and having a car and taking care of their kids. And, and how cool is that you can do that while making a difference in patients' life? And that's, to me, what makes community pharmacy like pretty awesome job. Like, I really enjoy that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the risk thing is so true. Like you accumulate all this stress, all this responsibility. Like there has to be something left over. Like you're just taking on too much risk not to have any, if you will, reward on the other side. So, I think there's a lot of conversation around just surviving, and sometimes you might have to go through periods in your industry where that is maybe just the goal. But also, there should be more to the business than just surviving. And one thing I think would do people a lot of good. And I don't know how much maybe Steve, Logan, you guys both do this, but I do think that learning about other industries is super helpful for pharmacies as well. I think there's a lot of nuggets to be learned from how other models and other, service-based businesses, how they do things. But also, I think as a business owner, it also maybe shrinks your problems because you realize that there's challenges in other industries too. And so if you just look at pharmacy and you compare pharmacy now to pharmacy a couple of years ago, it's easy to be maybe disheartened in certain ways. But if you take a look at other industries, I mean, the restaurant business is pretty brutal. The grocery business is pretty brutal. So, I mean, pick your industry, it has problems, but I think if you don't step out and kind of almost really get interested in business as a whole in different industries, it's very easy to think that pharmacy, woe is me, like it's this terrible thing. But start up any other business,
You
it's
nailed
got
it. And
its
I mean,
own,
I think that's right.
downsides
It's
as
all
well.
about your
So
attitude. And if you love what you do,
yeah,
you're going to find a way
um,
to make it work. And that's the honest truth about that.
yeah, absolutely. So I know you're starting to be a lot more active on social media with content you're putting out, which I think is again, kudos to you. Not to like put you in a bucket or anything like that, but you're not a 25-year-old pharmacy that just took over. 25-year-old pharmacist that just took over the business. Like I think you've already kind of spoken to your willingness to try new things, do new things, and just stay on kind of the forefront of where you think the industry is going. If you could kind of talk a little bit about maybe the content you're doing on social media, why you're starting to do more of the content that you're doing, and kind of how that plays into maybe the opportunities that you see for Magnolia Pharmacy and for pharmacists, as a whole, to maybe be
This is
more
a space that I
outspoken as
think
it
we all have to get
pertains
in.
to
I've,
health.
I've always been a big tell your story guy. And I haven't even mentioned advocacy. Like we've got to protect our profession. And that's really kind of where some of my first social media stuff started, was on the advocacy side and making sure that we get out in front of our patients and let them know the struggles that we have. But more importantly, knowing that, what is it, 80 to 90% of all people are going to social media now for healthcare. And I get on there and I watch these people that are like, just because I took a GLP-1 and lost 30 pounds, now I'm the GLP-1 expert for the country, and I don't even barely have a high school diploma. Well, no offense. Like, I've got a doctor of pharmacy degree. I've got fellowships in wellness. And it's like, why don't I be that person and try to deliver that platform? Because one of the things I have learned, and you talk about comparing practices, is like like a doctor's office and a pharmacy. One of the neat things that I have as an advantage over a pharmacy is that my pharmacy can make money, and and I don't have to be there. And so that's one of the things I've learned on a doctor's practices, and I hear them talk about all the time, is there's only one of them. And if there's only one of them, they only can see so many patients in a day, and there's a limit to the space and the opportunity they have to make money, and they have the ability to impact patients' lives. So it's the same thing. When I was doing wellness concerts and charging by the hour, I keep upping my rate because, no offense, like, my time is valuable and I can't give it away. Well, guess what? Social media is the way to change that game, because what I can do is I can take the same thing that I spent on a one-on-one consult with the person, get in front of my camera, produce some video, produce some content, teach and educate, and then you broadcast that in a platform that I can basically get in front of hundreds and thousands of people, have that same message, but then at the same time educate, make a difference in patients' lives, but then also drive a profit about my business. And that's the cool part, because, like you said, I'm not big in this yet. I try super hard. I know my stuff. I know that much. I'm still trying to learn what ticks, and I'm uber competitive. So I spend way more time lately. I don't get on social media get on social media to find out like how to be successful at it. But I'm learning. But each day I learn a little more and learn how to basically take the same material I was doing like 6 months ago and make it a little more appealing, a little more catchy. It's still the same message, but try to deliver that. But not only, but the same thing is grow my brand, grow my business. And at the same time, like you said, it's not only growing me and what I do, but it grows my staff. It allows them to grow, and it actually makes them grow. Because one of the fun things is, it's one thing to do online sales, but the number of people coming to my store saying, "Hey, I saw this video Steve did, And what it does, it makes my pharmacists get outside their comfort zone because a lot of them are really good and exceptional at knowing supplements, but they have to be really good now. So it's almost like I have to give them a debrief every day. It's like, okay, this is going out. This is what it's about. You better learn. But it's created a camaraderie among staff. And they're like, all right, Steve, what are you going to do today? What's going this week? Because we want to know. But the social media aspect allows you to deliver a platform to a lot of people. And to me, I think the other thing that I enjoy about social media is its ability to be trackable and traceable. You know, in the old days, we would put a billboard up on the baseball field, or I'd run an ad in a newspaper. I don't know how many people see it. I think they see it. And somebody may come in and say, I saw your ad in the paper. But it's really cool in the social media to say, hey, I spent X number of dollars on this. I see how many clicks I got. I see how many pass-throughs I got. I see how many it turned into sales. And that part to me actually is pretty exciting to kind of see that you can get an ROI on what you're doing. At the same time, you're building brand, and at the same time, you're spreading good health information.
Yeah. Now, I know you're outside of Houston and kind of more in like a suburb. So I don't know how much has maybe changed in some ways, but a lot of times I hear pharmacists say things like, my patients wouldn't buy supplements or my patients wouldn't buy that product. It's too expensive. And I know, Logan, you can speak to that as well, where, you kind of have these preconceived notions of, well, they complained about their copay being $2, like no chance they're going to buy a supplement or they're going to, want to do a consult for me and stuff. What have and this is to both of you guys, but I guess I'll start with, Steve, like, what have you noticed from like starting to make content and maybe some of the patients that are starting to ask questions, buy product, want to do consultations? Like, what are you seeing at the ground level from your patients? Again, I know you're maybe not in the most rural environment, maybe compared to other pharmacies. But what have you noticed, boots on the ground? Social media is great to get in front of
So
people
what
all
I've
over the
seen is,
country.
and this
What
is
have you
something I think I
noticed in
heard
your
somebody
neck of
else
the
say,
woods?
if you can create social media content and explain or describe a problem or an issue to where that person sees that and says, oh my gosh, that is better explained than I could have said it myself, then somehow you create a connection with that person. And I am not for like selling something just to sell it. That's not what I'm about. I like to research supplements, sell quality, and sell things that make a difference. And what I've seen is that if you can make that connection with the patient and explain an issue or a problem that they're having, and then deliver a consumable that can actually make a difference in that, people will spend money even when they maybe don't even have it, because people are looking for a hope and a prayer to change an outcome. Because I've found out sometimes people have to get just sick enough to say, okay, enough's enough. I'll do whatever. I'll change my diet. I'll make sure I get more sleep. I'll make sure I exercise. I'll spend money for that supplement if it can deliver me a better health outcome. And that's the part is, and I think it's trying to find that way to deliver that message. But that's the thing. It's been surprising to me because at some point I almost feel bad at asking to deliver and sell something or even like bundle things, because I'm like, nobody's ever going to spend that kind of money. But really, in their health, it's going to make a big difference. And sure as a world, you do that, and next thing you know, it's like boom, boom, boom. People will buy those supplements and take them. I see it in the store all the time. I didn't really think it would work on the social media side, but it does. And that's not even with me in front of them. That's just me telling my story in front of a camera. And I think that is surprising to me. That really kind of is quite impressive.
And I know, Logan, you've had that same experience from the small pharmacy you were at previously, and now in Grand Rapids, maybe not as big as Houston, but yeah, over the years, regardless of where you've been, you've found that to be true too.
Yeah, yeah. It's always surprising me the patients that you start hearing their complaints and their what they're going through, and you say, oh, yeah, let me guess, you wake up between 1 and 3. You probably have a lot of issues as far as GI, maybe some gas blood. And they're like, yeah, how'd you know that? I was like, well, I've seen a few patients who've had these same symptoms. You're tired all the time. You're sluggish in the morning. You drink caffeine, but it doesn't affect you. Like, sounds like you have a little bit of adrenal dysfunction going on. Like, how can we work around this? And then like you give them a few different ideas, like let's try diet and exercise. There's definitely different things. With adrenal dysfunction, don't over exercise them by any means, but they need to get on that route and fix their gut generally first. Because so for example, I saw a 21-year-old male came in. He's like, man, I'm really depressed. And I've got tons of anxiety. And I was like, well, tell me what you're eating. Well, he's like, oh, I eat like, dorm food and whatnot. And I was like, what's going on besides that? And he's like, well, a lot of gas and bloating. So he's probably having a lot of issues making serotonin, right? Serotonin's 95% made in the gut. And so let's just fix your diet first. Like, you don't need to spend any money on supplements. Let's just fix what you're eating, and then we'll go to that. So, and he's like, well, how much do I owe you for today? And I was like, well, like $145 for the hour. Like, we'll call it good. And he's like, no, I'm going to pay you more than that. And so he ended up paying me more than what I normally charge. And I wasn't going to say no because I spent a lot of time with him. And he's like, you should tell more people like what you do. And then you tell that story online, and now you have all these people who are like, yeah, I have those same symptoms. And you hear again and again and again. And so it makes really good connections. So utilizing those stories can be really beneficial for, I think, not only your pharmacy, but also, the community. Even, I've talked about pets every once in a while in pet owners. And this is a great area, especially for compounding pharmacies. If you're not doing a whole lot of pets or talking to your vets, you should be, because some people see pets as their kids. And so we had a dog who had some GI distress. And so we had them take some probiotics for the dog. Obviously, we always talk to the vet and let them know, like, hey, this is what we're recommending. We don't want to step on your toes, because they're professionals too, and they make money off of their supplements as well. But they were cool with it, and dog started feeling better. And they're like, can you like check my cousin's dog? And you're like, sure, like, tell me what's going on with your cousin's dog. And so those stories resonate with a lot of people. And I think it's really good that we're actually sharing that, because before, people don't know what pharmacists do. Like, when I was growing up, I always thought like pharmacists just counted pills. Like, great. But that's not what in my opinion, like a real pharmacist should be: having those conversations, working with the patients, helping out their families. And that's what I learned at my last position, was really connecting with the community. And if you do that, they'll take care of you. Kind of like what Steve had already said.
Now, with both of you, something I admire about the two of you as it relates to the pharmacy space, and this might come across as somewhat controversial, but I do think it's a good idea if you are going to probably move into the health space, as maybe more of maybe a point of focus or something you're more vocal about, to walk the walk yourself. Whether that be anything that you do in life. I think, if you're going to give advice, you should probably follow your own advice, or again, health and wellness or not. So I don't want people to maybe listen to this episode or hear a clip from it and then think, okay, Steve's excited about compounding. Steve and Logan are both excited. Logan's excited about compounding. They're both excited about supplements. I need to just start talking about supplements and recommending supplements and start talking about magnesium just because I see it's a popular subject, right? And I think there's a lot of, in any business, like, you go to an event, you go to a trade show, you hear people are making money in these different areas, and then you try it for like 5 minutes, and then you don't make money, and then you kind of give up. So, if someone was interested in kind of going down the rabbit hole of, investing more in their education around health and wellness so that they could be a true maybe thought leader, or, be more valuable, where would you guys recommend they kind of start? And what realistic kind of time frame would you give them of, starting to maybe educate yourself on it to maybe it starts
Me
to
personally,
be a more
I
meaningful
went and
part
did
of
an
your
A4M
business?
fellowship, and it's maybe a bit extreme. It costs a lot of money. I would say, to me, one of the first things that on this wellness journey, if you're going to do this, you've got to understand the endocrine system, which is basically all the sex hormones, thyroid, and that. So like IFM and A4M each offer like an endocrine model. So to me, if you're going to do just one thing, go do that, because no offense, I think that's like one of the easiest ones to do, but it encompasses most of the problems that you're going to deal with to know well. So that's the first thing I would do. I'm not saying those are the only two organizations, but those two are very well recognized. They've kind of got their specialties in different things. I would say A4M is a little more compound friendly, where IFM is more education, medical practitioner with the sprinkling of compounding in it. So just keep that in mind about the type of education you're going to get. Then the other thing I think I would do is I would pitch yourself, or I would work to partner with a lot of the supplement vendors, not only in your area. Like, one of the things that I think is great that we do free education for my staff is we have the supplement vendors come in my store at least once a quarter and do lunch and learns with my staff, because it goes back. Like, I mean, I can be at my counter and trust me, I can pay my salary 10 times over in a day recommending supplements, but I can't say that for my staff. But this education costs money, and many of the supplement vendors will come into your store and educate your staff and tell you about their products, so that your staff is knowledgeable and educated. Because the thing is that you can put any supplement you want on your shelf, but it's not going to sell itself. I mean, you've got to be able to have the knowledge and talk the talk and explain it. And you're right, whether that's a little bit on your own lifestyle, but your staff has to know it. But your supplement vendors, I mean, they want to sell just like you do. So they'll come in and educate your staff. And that is a free outlet that you got to take advantage of. And to me, they have their own events too. You can go to those. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like last year, I sent a couple of my pharmacists to an event in Nashville. It was a 1-day event that Ortho put on. And I'm going to be honest with you, like I've made my money out of that like 100-fold, because both of them come back and can talk the talk and walk the walk, can help patients. And to me, that's kind of where it all starts. I mean, you're not going to know this stuff overnight. I mean, it's going to take, a good year plus to get your feet wet, but it's a lifelong learning thing. I mean, this stuff constantly changes and constantly grows, but there is great education out there to make sure you're successful.
Yeah, I'm going to foot stomp that too. I think, so I went through A4M's fellowship as well. I found them to be, in my opinion, I liked their program a little bit better than IFM's program. IFM is definitely much more of that functional health. And so they lean a lot more towards that diet and lifestyle change, where A4M, in my opinion, is a little bit more integrated healthcare. And then I would say SAFM is probably the other, probably top dog in the area. I don't know much about the program. I haven't taken any of their courses, so I can't speak on that, but I do know colleagues who have, and they know their stuff. I'm going to also agree, definitely a year. You've got to get some experience. It's going to take time. One of the things that I thought was funny the other day is one of my technicians was like, Logan, how can you just spit that all out and feel so confident? And I go, Dawn, I've said this 10,000 plus times. Like, it didn't come out of nowhere. I've been doing this long enough. And so I think that's one of the things is they have to get used to talking to patients and just be okay sucking, because you're going to suck the first 50 to 100 times that you say something, but all of a sudden it's going to click and you're going to be able to pick up on like, what kind of questions do the patients normally ask after, like, what's adrenal dysfunction? And you're like, it's not good. Like, that's not the answer you want to give. Like, be able to explain it. So those are all good programs. I would say, even just starting on yourself and your family and working from there initially is a really good starting point. Even offer it to friends at no charge. Like, hey, I just want somebody to work with, and I know that your wife doesn't sleep, so let me just provide some supplements or provide some recommendations to their provider about, maybe starting with a little bit of progesterone. It's a great way to get some great sleep, reduce some anxiety, potentially depression, right? All good things, especially if they're estrogen dominant. So I think that's where, for me, that's where I started, was just working on myself, working on friends and family, and then really starting to trial with patients. And the other thing is, like, you can't be afraid to learn outside of work. There's a lot of individuals who are like, hey, I punch out at 5:30 and I'm done. I can't tell you the number of times that I've stayed long on a day so I can listen to a recording or go to an event. And like Steve said, and I'm really excited that you're doing this, Steve, as far as with your pharmacists, providing them experiences so that they can get that knowledge, so that it's not all on you. Because I will say, from my own experience, right now, I'm really the only pharmacist at my store that does this. And I am stretched very thin because I'm the only one that can ever make recommendations. Staff members are nervous to make recommendations, or they think they may make the wrong ones. So, for example, today I was interrupted 8 times. I counted because I was irritated by it the other day. And so 8 times to come out and just answer a very simple question that any of my technicians could be able, like, what type of vitamin D would I recommend? And I'm like, guys, we talked about this many times, but they're not doing the work. And so they're not the ones that are talking about it. And so getting your staff trained is incredibly important. And I think it takes a lot of responsibility off whoever's kind of that main person to free them up to really help grow the business in other fashions.
You said something that's super important. That's what makes social media so valuable. You can take the thing, like you said, 10,000 times and put it in a video. I've done that more than once. We started putting some of this stuff on YouTube. So if somebody comes in and is like, hey, versus spending a lot of time. Why don't you go to our YouTube and watch this video on vitamin D? It'll tell you all you need to know. Then if you have more questions, you can come back and get with us. And like, that's kind of the neat thing. It allows for a mass reproduction of the same thing. So you don't wear yourself out so much. And I think that's one of the tools that social media really allows for. So that's a great point.
Yeah, that I found that to be very beneficial. Something else that we've done is utilize QR codes, especially on a lot of our compounds. So things like ketamine. So we do quite a bit of ketamine nasal sprays and troches and RUTs. And patients are always like, "Oh, how do I do my nasal spray?" So we were like, "Screw it. We're making a video. We put it on YouTube. We put it like scan here to learn how to do this." So that way we don't get the phone calls, because nothing else is going to slow you down more than being on the phone, having to explain it to a patient. They can't see it, so they don't understand it, because so many people are visual learners, and that's a great way to do it. And I think I might have to start adopting a little bit more of that, so that way I can stop being bothered. I can live in my little cave that I live in.
So, something I guess I was, going for in some sense on like how long this journey might be is, I think you both are touching on it in different ways, but like it gets better with time. Like, tell me where I'm getting the timeline wrong, but first enough to kind of be dangerous, and then probably know enough to actually start making a difference in people's lives. And then you get some of that feedback, and then I think Steve, you're kind of hitting on it where, and I'm sure all companies would largely do this, but given your size and maybe given some of your volume, because you invested in education and then you invested in your staff and then you've built a good culture, then you put a lot of great people on your team and you've helped build a great team. Then when you have a rep come in and do a lunch and learn, the buy-in from the team is a little bit better. Like they're more interested, they're more engaged, they're more interested in taking that information and doing something with it. And so you start to get these luxuries, and they're built, to be clear, they're built over time. But if you would have judged like A4M or IFM in its value year one, that would have been extremely short-sighted in the value of that program. And I think, again, just as a whole in business, sometimes I think people draw, make decisions around ROI or what project they're working on, like too short, and they stop, start, and they just keep shifting at these different trade shows to the next, like kind of get rich quick, kind of perceived opportunity in the space. I think you both are great examples of, probably one out of a handful of patients you get to buy supplements early on. And now probably when most times you talk to a patient, it would almost be surprising if they didn't walk away buying the product that you
100%.
recommended.
And I think you get better
to
at teasing out from patients
agree.
what the real facts are. I think that's really what changes. It's one thing for somebody to come and say, I have GI issues, or, okay, I've got diarrhea. I think your ability to tease out what the problems are and hone in better to focus, and you're going to be more successful. You're going to make a better recommendation, and the patient has success. Well, then guess what? It makes you look better, and then it further drives your brand and your trustability and all that. I could not agree with you more than that. That's a great point, Chris.
Yeah. And with that too, like, because again, I just want to hammer this point because I think it's just so important. Like, can you both think of roughly off the top of your head examples where you worked with the patient, you helped the patient, and then either years later they came back, or years later a friend of a friend or a family member came back, and it was because of that kind of interaction that maybe you had with the patient years prior. And so again, that's like, if you stop too quickly, you don't get some of the compounding effects of the word of mouth or of the referrals, because maybe the first time they see one of your videos or they talk to you and they do a consultation with you, like they might not have some other problems, or the information that you shared might not be relevant to them at that time. But if you're making the content, you're communicating with patients and kind of doing some of that more personal health time spent with them, etc. When they have those different challenges, you're the first person that they think of. And I think that's also a critical piece of giving things time and being consistent over time. Is like, they might not need you now, but when they do, you want to be the person that they think of. And I think Coca-Cola is a great example of that, where everyone knows what Coca-Cola is, but yet they market really aggressively so that whenever you think of a soda, like they are the company that you think of. And even as well known as they are, they don't stop, getting their message out and kind of marketing their product. And I think, pharmacies, you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, Steve, they've often just been, experts, but have been too, very quiet and have been beat out by people that are just more active and more vocal, on online and therefore kind of get the first crack at patients. Hence why I'm sure a lot of times you get patients that come to you guys that have seen a couple different providers, gone to a variety of different routes, and then they end up at you, right? Imagine the flip side, of that equation, which is they find you and they come to you first, right? And I think that's obviously where you maybe rather be is getting that opportunity first than maybe their 20th, where they're frustrated and they're jaded and less belief that you can actually make a difference. So, yeah, for what it's worth, I think it's so important, so important. So, Steve, I won't keep you too much longer. I know you're super involved with NCPA, and you're obviously going out to DC and you're trying to do a lot of different things for pharmacy as a whole. Could you speak on that a little bit? And if pharmacies could do one thing that would kind of help what you're working on, and just help the industry as a whole, what might that be, so that again collectively you guys
To be
can
honest with you, I didn't
work
do much
together to maybe
advocacy or
see
that
some of the changes you
aspect
guys
of
are looking for?
things until my son told me he wants to go to pharmacy school, and he got out last year and is working for me. He's been with me for a year now. So I feel like it's my job to pay it forward because I've got to make sure he has a profession and a job and the ability to be successful. So I would go back and say that it's if there's any one thing a local community pharmacy needs to do, they need to get politically active. Every one of us has a local mayor, a local city council person, a state representative, a federal that's their customer. And what's sad is we've been actually able to move the bar with, I bet, probably less than 5 or 10% of all community pharmacies getting politically active in advocacy because you have to because it's said all the time, and this is like something I made up. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And the point is that you have to be active in this. And we've been able to move the needle. When I went to Washington 3-4 years ago, we walked into a legislator's office and mentioned PBMs. They had no clue what a PBM is. Now I can tell you, I walk in the door and they see me. They're like, I know PBMs, trust me. We know they're bad. We know what's going on. It's just the problem is they've got a massive lobby and we're trying to move the needle, and it's going to happen. It just takes time. But everybody that does pharmacy, and it isn't just on advocacy and PBMs. It's like we just talked about, getting paid for our services. It's our scope of practice. It's provider recognition. It's provider status. We need to be recognized as a medical provider that can provide medical education and benefit other than providing and putting pills in a bottle. And that's all part of it. And that's the other part to me, like you mentioned, Chris, the social media part is so important because it's one thing for me to preach and teach in my store when people come in. But if I can get on social media and tell this story to the general public that don't even come to my store, that don't even know what a pharmacy is about. Because like you said, like my mentor told me, nobody ever wants to come to a pharmacy. I mean, honestly, of all the places people want to come, that's not the place they want to come. But when they do need a pharmacy, you want people to know that you're there and you want them to know that. And that's what the advocacy piece by telling your story on social media does. But my son's kind of forced my hand in making me do that. And so now it's become kind of a passion on the political side to get involved and make sure that our legislators know the value that we bring to our communities so that we have the ability to continue to practice. And so I think, once again, is if you're not interacting with those local, if you're not with your local, your state, and your federal representatives, and you know them by name and you don't get them in your store, then shame on you, because that's as important as putting the right drug in the right pill in the right bottle at this point about protecting your profession and paying that forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, I know you got a son, so maybe like this is almost advice to him, but I'll phrase the question anyways. If Steve Hoffer in 2002 was listening to this episode, what would what advice would you give him? Where would you tell them to focus? What would you, tell them to think about of the road ahead? What advice would you
Like
give
three
to,
things. One,
again,
think
maybe it's
outside the
your son in
box.
this example?
If you think you're going to fill prescriptions the rest of your life and make a living, it's not going to happen. So you've got to think outside the box and look for opportunities that are outside of what you knew. Number two is be a lifelong learner. If you don't, and that isn't just on the medical health and wellness side. I mean, that's on the business side. Like there's times like I don't really have time, but I kind of want to go back in and get an MBA because no offense to one little class a little bit where I learned pharmacy business, how to read a spreadsheet and profit loss. I mean, we are running businesses. It's a business practice. And when it all said and done, it all comes down to the paper and what's at the bottom line and can you pay the bills? And so I would think know the business side of what it is. And then the last thing is develop strong relationships. You've got to have a super strong relationships to the colleagues and the leaders in your profession because you want to be friends with them because they're going to help you grow and you're going to help them grow. But then it's also the relationships with your employees. I would just say you're only as good as what your staff is and you need to take time to develop them because if you develop them, not only are you going to be your own self professionally well rounded and do well, but when you see them grow, it makes what you do, more important every day and you realize the value. So if you kind of focus on those three things and that's what you put your efforts at, you're going to have it. I don't care if it's a pharmacy or a grocery store, you're going to have a successful business because those three things are going to add up to success for you in the long run.
I think that's so well said. Logan, you got anything else?
No, I think that covers it. I mean, took the words out of my mouth. I think one thing that I would add is for those individuals who aren't really quite sure on how to connect with their state representatives, a great way is just invite them to your pharmacy. Show them what a compounding pharmacy is because I guarantee they've never walked into one or they don't even know what you do. And that's a great way to kind of introduce them to that and kind of, get in front of their face and be able to talk to them. That's really been great. We've done that a few times at our pharmacy. And so that's just a great way to kind of introduce yourself to them.
Sweet. Well, I guess, Steve, I won't, force you to say yes to this, but if there were pharmacies, if people had questions, would it be safe to assume that if they reached out to Magnolia Pharmacy and a question that
It'd be an honor,
you'd be willing
buddy.
to
If
help them
people
out,
hadn't
answer a
helped me, I
question
wouldn't be where I'm
point
at
them in the right
today. So
direction?
I've always been taught you've got to pay it forward.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, again, if you didn't catch it at the beginning, Steve Hoffer, Magnolia Pharmacy, Magnolia, Texas, great state of Texas.
Now,
Longhorn, Steve, are
that's something
the
to predict, and
Longhorns
I
going to win the
can't.
national
I can tell you a
championship
lot
this
of
year
stuff,
in
but
football?
that one's a stretch as far as that goes. It's gonna be a fun year. It's gonna be a SEC year, but we'll see what happens. I'm not gonna make a prediction on that one. So sorry. We're gonna find out. They're gonna find out really quick when they play in the
Is
SEC
Texas
this
back?
year.
Is
It'll be
Texas
it'll be
back?
fun. I do think they got a good chance to make a good run this year.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. So, anyways, for what it's worth, again, thank you for coming on. Thank you for contributing to the industry and walking the walk, talking the talk, and just leading from the front. I think that's so important. With for this industry to move forward, there's got to be more Steve Hoffers and more leaders that are trying to change things and try to better, not just their businesses, but also, pay it forward, like you said. So, would love to have you back on in the future once we've got some more progress updates across the different things that you're focusing on, maybe an outlook on 2025. Maybe we'll do something, kind of later in the year. But anyways, thanks for hopping on. Thanks for spending your Thursday evening with us. And again, for all you guys listening, like, subscribe, come on back to the Money Medicine podcast, and we'll keep bringing on great guests
Chris, have a
and
great
great
evening.
information from people like Steve Hoffer.